So this $20 piece was issued in 1853, but there's an interesting backstory behind that.
Well, absolutely. So, John Little Moffat was extremely successful and extremely well respected, to the point that when the United States government decided that they were going to establish an assay office, they actually contracted with him to run it. So when you see a Humbert slug or a Humbert 10 or a Humbert 20, what we call Humberts, those were all struck by the assay office while it was being run by John Little Moffat. And then in late 1851, early 1852, Moffat actually decides he's going to retire and sells his business to Curtis, Perry, and Ward, who are actually the and company behind Moffat and Company. And Curtis, Perry, and Ward run the assay office, starting with the pieces we refer to as USAOG, or United States Assay Office of Gold pieces. And under their tenure, the United States decided that they only wanted to accept 900 fine gold coins for customs duties, and that as a result, the assay office would then be required to only strike coins that were 900 fine. And you sort of see this in 1853. You have 884 thousandths and 900 thousandths, 10s and 20s. And basically what you're seeing there is if they had a shortage of parting acids, they wouldn't be able to refine the gold to 900 fine. And for a little while, they actually struck these 884 fine coins, but they actually got in trouble with the government. They were only supposed to be striking 900 fine coins. So Curtis, Perry, and Ward resurrect the Moffat name and actually strike 1853 Moffat 20s as an emergency issue when they can't produce 900 fine coins.
So this was a very interesting period in American history, the 1850s, and for California it was an inflationary period because of all the gold. How much coinage and from the East Coast Mint, the Philadelphia Mint, actually was making it out to California?
Next to nothing.
So essentially they had to have private minting because otherwise they wouldn't have money.
Well, exactly. I mean, what you have to understand about the expansion of San Francisco particularly is San Francisco in 1848, 1849 was a little fishing village pretty much. You had maybe a couple thousand people there, and within a few years it was a thriving metropolis, but people basically carried the money in their pockets there. They heard that there was gold in the hills. They didn't come bringing money, they came hoping to make money.
Right.
And I think if you look at something like the Saddle Ridge Hoard, it's actually an interesting cross-section of what you would have found in California. Now, granted, that would have been material that was found between the 1860s and 1890s there, not in the 1850s. But, I mean, if you look at what was in that group, it was 95% or more coins that had been struck in California. And that's actually probably a pretty accurate picture of what was there. You would have had some Mexican coins, and you would have had what people carried in their pockets, but other than that, it was dust and nuggets from mining and panning gold that ran that economy. And that's why you have the private minters cropping up as soon as 1849. There was no mint there, and so it was a necessity.
So it's 1853 issue. I mean, how long did that circulate?
Well, it's kind of interesting because some private coins were actually quite acceptable despite the James King of William affair. And if you look at the sort of material that comes up that's heavily circulated on a regular basis, you get an idea of what sort of stuff circulated for a while. Moffat 20s were one of the things that were acceptable. Assay office pieces were acceptable money. Moffat 10s, Moffat 5s, all of that kind of material that is, for rare coins, relatively common compared to, say, Pacific Company, Baldwin, the real big names, the real rarities. All of the stuff that you encounter in relatively low grade, that's the stuff that was circulating right up to 1857, 1858, 1860. How do we know this? Take a look at what's on the Central America.
Right.
You find plenty of circulated pieces by Moffat. Not so many Moffat 20s. It was an emergency issue that probably wasn't made for very long. But, you do find Moffat 20s that are in relatively low grade. Kellogg's, which of course were emergency issues that were being struck in 1854 and 1855. Wasp-Molitors, another trusted issue, issued as an emergency coin in 1852, issued again in 1855. Those are things that people in the city of San Francisco trusted, and they continue to circulate. It's the coins that people felt didn't have enough gold in them that got melted down and thus became incredible rarities.
So this piece actually is a conditional rarity. It's an MS-62.
That's correct. It's actually the finest coin the PCGS has ever seen, and it's really a remarkable piece. I've been a big fan of Moffat 20s since I started working for Kagin's. It was obvious to me that they were much, much, much rarer than, say, Kellogg's or a lot of the other things that I was encountering. But at the time, they weren't really bringing a huge premium. And of course, that's changed over the last 10 years or so. People have started to look at the population reports and understand that these are incredibly rare coins.